The wind howled across the frozen plains, carrying with it the biting chill of a relentless ice age night. Snow blanketed the landscape like an endless, unforgiving ocean of white, hiding jagged rocks and treacherous ice beneath its surface. For the early humans who roamed these lands, every gust of wind and every snowfall was not merely a discomfort. It was a test of endurance, a challenge to their very survival. In these moments, the difference between life and death was measured not in days, but in hours, as the temperature plunged and predators lurked silently in the shadows. Imagine a small group of cavemen huddled together in a cave, their breath visible in the frigid air, the faint glow of fire flickering against stone walls. Their eyes, wide and alert, scanned the darkness outside, aware that a single mistake could mean the difference between safety and becoming food for a passing wolf or a hungry bear. Within this fragile sanctuary, warmth, light, and community combined to form a temporary shield against the harsh reality of the Ice Age. The contrast between the safety of the cave and the merciless cold of the outside world is stark, illustrating the daily gamble early humans faced during the winter months. The Ice Age was not a single event, but a prolonged epic of relentless cold, glaciers, and shifting ecosystems. Forests retreated, rivers froze, and the animals that had once roamed freely adapted or vanished entirely. For humans, this meant that every resource, from edible plants to hunting grounds, was scarce, hidden beneath layers of ice and snow. Survival demanded more than strength or courage. It required ingenuity, observation, and profound understanding of the natural world. Every decision, whether to venture out for food, to confront a predator, or to retreat deeper into the cave, was a calculated risk. The tension between the instinct to explore and the need for caution defined life on these frozen frontiers. Within the cave, there is a quiet drama that unfolds each night. The group's survival hinges on fire, the small, flickering flames that provide warmth and the ability to cook meat. Smoke curls toward the ceiling, carrying the scent of roasted animal fat and a hint of safety. In this glowing cocoon, the cavemen share stories, gestures, and knowledge that cannot be written down, passing lessons from one generation to the next. This interplay of fear and reassurance, danger and comfort, creates a rhythm that governs daily life in winter. The cave becomes more than a shelter. It is a crucible where human resilience is tested and reinforced. Outside, the frozen landscape is both beautiful and deadly. Towering ice formations glint in the pale light of the moon, while distant shadows suggest movement. Wolves stalking, bears roaming, perhaps even rival human groups searching for food. Every noise is amplified, every shadow magnified, and every misstep can lead to catastrophe. The cold seeps into bones, slowing reaction times and sapping strength, making even a simple journey to collect firewood a perilous endeavor. The world beyond the firelight is a constant reminder of nature's overwhelming power and the fragility of human life. Psychologically, these harsh winters shaped early humans in ways we are only beginning to understand. Living on the edge of survival demanded not only physical endurance, but also mental fortitude. Fear was a constant companion, yet it was tempered by the need to act decisively and cohesively as a group. Early humans had to develop an acute awareness of their surroundings, reading subtle signs in the wind, snow, and animal behavior to anticipate danger. This awareness was intertwined with creativity and ingenuity, the spark of intelligence that allowed humans not only to survive, but eventually to thrive in even the harshest climates. As dawn approached, the first pale rays of the sun crept across the snow, casting long shadows and revealing the stark beauty of the frozen terrain. For the cavemen, it marked a temporary reprieve from the night's dangers, but also a reminder that the struggle was ongoing. Each day brought the challenge of hunting scarce game, gathering hidden vegetation, and maintaining the fire that kept them alive. The contrast between the cold, silent night and the fragile warmth of human ingenuity is central to understanding how our ancestors endured these extreme conditions. In this opening scene, viewers are invited to step into the world of prehistoric winter survival. They witness the delicate balance of fear and hope, cold and warmth, life and death. By framing survival as both a physical and psychological challenge, the story immediately engages the audience, setting the stage for a journey through human ingenuity, resilience, and a relentless pursuit of life in the face of nature's most formidable trials. Here, in the frozen embrace of the Ice Age, we begin to understand what it truly meant to survive the coldest nights humanity has ever faced. The Ice Age was a world both magnificent and merciless, a time when glaciers stretched across continents and the very landscape seemed frozen in an eternal winter. Snow and ice dominated vast stretches of Europe, Asia, and North America, reshaping rivers, forests, and plains into a harsh, unyielding environment. For early humans, life during this epoch was defined by constant adaptation. Unlike the relatively temperate climates of earlier eras, the Ice Age demanded innovation and resilience at every turn. Survival was a daily negotiation with the elements, and the stakes could not have been higher. One wrong step could mean exposure, starvation, or death. In this frozen world, glaciers were the architects of both danger and opportunity. Towering walls, ice advanced and retreated over millennia, carving valleys, forming lakes, and redirecting waterways. These geological changes forced humans and animals alike to migrate, to search for food and safer ground. Herds of large mammals, woolly mammoths, reindeer, and bison, followed vegetation to the shifting landscapes, while humans tracked their movements, learning to anticipate patterns and exploit opportunities. The survival of an entire tribe could hinge on a single successful hunt, where skill, timing, and understanding of the terrain determined whether families would eat or starve. The climate itself was unpredictable and brutal. Winters could last months, plunging temperatures far below freezing, while sudden storms could bury a hunting ground under several feet of snow in a single night. Humans had to contend not only with the cold, but also with the scarcity of resources that followed. Plants were buried, animals migrated or hibernated, and water sources froze solid. This scarcity amplified the dangers of predation, as carnivorous animals followed the same food sources, creating competition that was often deadly. The contrast between periods of abundance and the harsh deprivation of winter was a defining feature of Ice Age life, shaping both human behavior and societal organization. Anthropological evidence shows that early humans evolved remarkable strategies to cope with these extremes. They learned to observe animal behavior, track migrations, and anticipate the changing seasons with astonishing precision. The development of tools and weapons allowed them to hunt efficiently, process food, and protect themselves from predators. Shelters became more than temporary refuges. They were carefully chosen locations, often near food sources or defensible positions, and adapted with insulation and fire to withstand the cold. This period marked a turning point where intelligence, collaboration, and foresight became as crucial to survival as physical strength. Ice Age flora and fauna adapted to survive the freezing temperatures in ways that both aided and challenged humans. Coniferous forests provided wood for fires and shelter, while shrubs and hardy plants offered sustenance when other foods were scarce. Animals like mammoths and woolly rhinoceroses developed thick fur and fat layers, and their migratory patterns became critical knowledge for human hunters. Predators, wolves, cave lions, and bears grew more dangerous as hunger intensified in the harsh winters, forcing humans to constantly weigh the risks of hunting against the need for nourishment. The tension between survival and danger was ever present, highlighting the delicate balance early humans maintained with the natural world. The geography of the Ice Age also played a pivotal role in shaping human survival strategies. Mountain ranges became natural barriers, funneling both humans and animals into specific migration routes. Frozen rivers acted as highways, allowing for faster travel, but also posed deadly risks when ice broke underfoot. Coastal areas, though frigid, sometimes offered more stable resources, including fish, shellfish, and bird populations. Understanding the land was not merely practical. It was a matter of life and death. Early humans developed an intimate relationship with their environment, reading subtle signs in snow patterns, wind direction, and animal tracks to navigate and plan. Social structures were influenced heavily by these environmental pressures. Small, cohesive groups were better equipped to share resources, maintain fire, and coordinate hunting expeditions. Division of labor became essential. Some individuals hunted large game, others gathered plants, and yet others tended to fire and shelter. The psychological benefits of these social bonds were as critical as the practical ones. Human beings, even in prehistory, understood the value of cooperation, communication, and collective problem-solving in a world where isolation could mean certain death. The contrast between the harsh, lonely expanses outside the cave and the warmth and security of a tightly knit group was stark and formative. Archaeological findings reveal fascinating glimpses of Ice Age ingenuity. Evidence of clothing made from animal hides, complex stone tools, and even rudimentary art suggests that early humans were not only surviving, but also expressing themselves and passing knowledge across generations. Seasonal campsites indicate migration patterns, while cave paintings hint at both practical and spiritual aspects of life, documenting hunts, recording animal behavior, and perhaps even serving as a form of communal storytelling. These innovations and cultural practices reflect a human drive to adapt creatively to the rigors of winter, transforming fear and scarcity into mastery and expression. The Ice Age was also a time of extreme psychological challenge. The relentless cold, scarcity of food, and constant threat from predators placed immense stress on early humans. Yet these pressures foster resilience, ingenuity, and an intimate understanding of nature's rhythms. Humans learned to read subtle environmental cues, predict changes, and make rapid, life-preserving decisions. This combination of observation, intuition, and social cooperation created the foundation for human survival under conditions that would have overwhelmed most species. The contrast between the merciless environment and human adaptability underscores the central narrative of Ice Age survival. Life in constant negotiation with nature, where every choice carried profound consequences. By understanding the Ice Age context, viewers gain insight into the backdrop against which cavemen lived and thrived. The frozen landscapes, shifting climates, and resource scarcity were not mere obstacles. They were shaping forces, molding human physiology, culture, and society. The stage was set for stories of courage, ingenuity, and resilience that would unfold in the caves, plains, and forests of this vast frozen world. This context is essential to appreciating the daily struggles and triumphs that define human existence during the coldest periods in Earth's history. As we move deeper into the narrative, the Ice Age reveals itself not only as a period of extreme adversity, but also as a crucible for innovation and survival. It is a time when the human spirit was tested against the unforgiving cold, where every dawn brought both peril and possibility. By framing the environment in this cinematic way, we begin to see the delicate interplay of climate, resourcefulness, and community that allowed early humans not merely to endure, but to lay the foundations for the future of our species. Surviving the relentless cold of the Ice Age required more than intelligence or luck. It demanded a body built to endure extremes. Early humans were not simply fragile creatures facing a harsh environment. They were remarkably adaptable beings whose physiology was shaped by evolution to withstand freezing temperatures and scarcity of resources. The physical traits of cavemen reveal a delicate balance between vulnerability and resilience, demonstrating how human anatomy became a critical factor in survival. From fat distribution to limb proportions, every aspect of the body was a tool in the fight against the cold. One of the most significant adaptations was the development of subcutaneous fat, a layer beneath the skin that served as insulation. Unlike many other mammals, humans could store fat in strategic locations to retain heat while maintaining mobility. This layer not only conserved body warmth during harsh winters, but also acted as a vital energy reserve when food was scarce. Fat was life itself in the Ice Age. Those with the ability to store it efficiently had a better chance of surviving long hunting trips or sudden freezes. The contrast between a well-nourished, insulated individual and one exposed to frostbite and exhaustion illustrates the razor-thin margin between life and death. Beyond insulation, body proportions played a crucial role. Populations in colder regions developed shorter limbs and more compact body structure, reducing surface area and conserving heat, a principle still observed in modern anthropological studies. The head, hands, and feet were particularly vulnerable to frostbite, prompting natural adaptations and behavioral strategies to protect them. Early humans learned to curl into sleeping positions that minimize exposure, cover extremities with fur or hides, and huddle together to share warmth. Each small adaptation, whether anatomical or behavioral, contributed to the overall survival strategy. Metabolism was another silent ally in the cold. Ice Age humans required a higher caloric intake to fuel body heat, particularly during long winters when hunting and foraging were both dangerous and energy-intensive. The ability to convert fat and protein into usable energy efficiently was essential, and failure to maintain this balance could lead to hypothermia or starvation. In this environment, food was not merely sustenance. It was a lifeline. The contrast between periods of adequate nutrition and scarcity created a dynamic where both the body and mind were constantly challenged, forcing humans to plan, ration, and innovate. The human body also exhibited remarkable endurance in response to environmental stress. Bone density was generally higher, supporting rigorous physical activity, from climbing icy slopes to dragging heavy game. Musculature was robust, reflecting a life of constant movement and labor. Even the cardiovascular system adapted to cope with sudden exertion in freezing temperatures, allowing for short bursts of intense activity essential for hunting or fleeing predators. These physical traits were complemented by mental resilience, as humans had to remain alert and strategic despite exhaustion, cold, and fear. The interplay between body and mind was critical, forming the foundation for survival strategies that were as much about intelligence as they were about physical strength. Psychologically, humans developed acute sensory awareness. Eyes adapted to low-light conditions, useful for dawn and dusk hunts when visibility was limited. Hands became dexterous, capable of crafting tools, manipulating fire, and constructing shelters. The nervous system, tuned to rapid response, allowed early humans to react quickly to threats from predators or rival tribes. This physiological readiness, combined with observational skills, created a finely tuned system for navigating the dangers of the Ice Age. The contrast between exposed vulnerability and physiological preparedness emphasizes how survival depended on a holistic integration of body, mind, and environment. Even the human skin played a role in winter survival. Exposure to the cold could trigger adaptive responses, such as goosebumps, shivering, and changes in blood flow to extremities, mechanisms designed to conserve heat. Early humans learned to supplement these natural responses with external solutions, fur, hides, and layers of clothing. Their understanding of how to protect the body through coverings, positioning near fire, and huddling in groups demonstrated an intuitive knowledge of physiology and thermodynamics, long before these concepts were scientifically described. The evolutionary pressures of the Ice Age also influenced reproduction and infant survival. Babies were born with a higher proportion of fat, which provided insulation, and mothers adapted behaviors to keep infants warm and nourished. Group cooperation extended to child rearing, ensuring that the next generation would survive the brutal winters. The contrast between the fragility of a newborn and the collective ingenuity of the community highlights the importance of both individual physiology and social structures in ensuring survival. In essence, early human physiology was a masterclass in adaptation. Every feature, from fat distribution to limb proportion, metabolic efficiency to mental acuity, was a response to the relentless demands of winter survival. The interplay between natural evolution and learned behavior allowed humans to endure conditions that would have crushed less adaptable species. By studying these physical adaptations, we gain insight into how our ancestors turned vulnerability into strength, fragility into resilience, and fear into a finely tuned survival instinct. Through this lens, we begin to understand that surviving the Ice Age was not merely about facing the cold. It was about mastering the self. The human body, shaped by millennia of evolutionary pressure, became a living testament to ingenuity and resilience. It is this foundation that allowed early humans to manipulate fire, fashion tools, build shelters, and create social systems, all strategies that will unfold in the following sections. The contrast between the harshness of the environment and the capability of the human body frames a narrative of survival, setting the stage for a deeper exploration of shelters, fire, and tools that became the lifelines of prehistoric winter life. In the frozen expanses of the Ice Age, survival often depended on finding a safe haven, a place to escape the merciless cold, predators, and snowstorms that could arrive without warning. For early humans, caves were more than shelters. They were sanctuaries, classrooms, and social hubs. Nestled among cliffs, rocks, or under natural overhangs, these refuges provided a delicate balance of safety and warmth, allowing humans to conserve energy and focus on hunting, gathering, and protecting their community. The contrast between the hostile world outside and the relative security inside a cave underscored the life and death stakes of winter survival. Caves offered natural insulation. Thick stone walls buffer the interior from wind and extreme temperature swings, keeping the cold at bay even during the harshest nights. Snow and ice piled high outside, yet inside, temperatures were often survivable without constant exertion. Early humans understood the strategic importance of location. Caves near water sources or hunting grounds reduced the need to venture into the deadly cold, while elevated entrances prevented flooding and provided a vantage point to monitor approaching predators. The selection of a cave was as critical as the fire within it. A poorly chosen shelter could spell disaster. Inside these natural fortresses, humans enhanced their shelters with ingenuity. Animal hides, layered for insulation, were draped across walls and floors, providing warmth and comfort. Branches, bones, and other natural materials were used to construct sleeping platforms, windbreaks, and barriers against small animals. The arrangement of fire pits was carefully considered, placed to maximize heat distribution while minimizing smoke inhalation. Even in a time before written language, humans demonstrated spatial intelligence, understanding airflow, heat retention, and the optimal placement of tools and supplies. These enhancements illustrate the contrast between passive survival and proactive mastery of the environment. Caves also offer protection from predators. The thick stone walls kept out wolves, bears, and other dangerous animals that prowled the snow-covered plains. Entrances were often narrow or elevated, making it easier to defend against intruders. Some evidence suggests that early humans even created primitive alarm systems. Piles of stones or sharpened sticks placed at key points, alerting inhabitants to movement outside. The psychological comfort of these fortifications cannot be overstated. In a world where one night alone in the cold could be fatal, a secure cave offered both physical and mental refuge. Community life thrived within these shelters. The cave was a hub of activity, where families huddled together for warmth, shared meals, and communicated essential knowledge. Fire was central, not just for heat, but as a gathering point for storytelling, planning hunts, and teaching children essential survival skills. The contrast between the chaos of the external environment and the structured, cooperative life inside the cave highlights the human capacity for adaptation, collaboration, and innovation. It was here that early humans began to turn the harshness of the Ice Age into an opportunity for growth and social cohesion. Strategic selection of caves also reflected an understanding of seasonal change. During the coldest months, deeper or more insulated caves were favored, while in milder seasons, temporary rock overhangs or constructed shelters sufficed. This seasonal adaptation demonstrates a sophisticated awareness of environmental patterns as humans balance comfort, safety, and proximity to resources. It also highlights the emerging concept of home as a dynamic space, adapted to changing conditions and used not only for survival but for planning, preparation, and social interaction. Archaeological evidence from Ice Age sites reveals fascinating details about how humans modified caves for comfort and efficiency. Floors were often lined with layers of leaves, grass, or furs, creating insulation from the cold stone. Fire pits were surrounded by stone rings to contain flames and reflect heat, and small alcoves were used to store tools, food, and even art materials. Cave walls were often adorned with symbolic markings, animal paintings, or handprints, indicating that these spaces were not only functional but also centers of cultural expression. The contrast between the utilitarian and the artistic underscores the multifaceted role of shelters in early human life: protection, community, and identity. The positioning of caves in relation to the surrounding landscape was another critical factor. Caves near rivers or streams provided access to water and food, while those at higher elevations offered visibility and security. Some were located near migratory paths of prey animals, allowing hunters to minimize exposure while maximizing hunting opportunities. Humans demonstrated remarkable foresight in site selection, understanding not just the immediate needs for warmth and shelter, but also the broader ecological context that would influence survival. This strategic awareness set the stage for later developments in settlement, trade, and human expansion. Caves also played a role in social hierarchy and leadership. In some groups, specific individuals controlled key resources, such as the best sleeping spots, fire maintenance, or storage areas. Elders, hunters, or skilled artisans might occupy central or protected positions within the cave, while younger or less experienced members stayed closer to the periphery. These subtle social arrangements reflect an early form of organization, where both physical safety and social cohesion were intertwined. The contrast between vulnerability and strategic occupation of space illustrates the complex interplay between environment, survival, and human ingenuity. Fire management inside caves was perhaps the most critical factor for winter survival. Early humans carefully monitored the type and quantity of fuel, selecting dry wood, animal fat, or dried moss to sustain flames. Smoke was managed to prevent suffocation, often through natural ventilation near cave openings. The warmth of fire extended the habitable range of the cave, allowing humans to remain inside for long periods, cook food, and dry hides for clothing. The combination of fire and cave structure exemplifies a profound understanding of environmental engineering, where natural and human-made elements were combined to create a livable microcosm in the midst of a frozen wilderness. Yet caves were not entirely safe. Snow and ice could block entrances, and predators sometimes attempted to breach the shelter. Humans remained vigilant, often keeping weapons within reach and maintaining lookout positions. The contrast between the safety of the interior and the danger lurking just outside reinforced the importance of preparation, alertness, and adaptability. Each day inside the cave was both a reprieve and a rehearsal, a period of relative comfort punctuated by the need for constant awareness and planning. By understanding how early humans utilized caves and constructed shelters, we gain insight into the ingenuity and adaptability that define Ice Age survival. These spaces were more than protection from cold. They were arenas of learning, cooperation, and cultural development. The interplay of environment, architecture, fire, and social dynamics reveals a complex system of survival that extended far beyond mere instinct. Caves were the stage upon which humans learned to dominate, endure, and eventually thrive, transforming the harshness of winter into an opportunity for innovation and community. In the bitter cold of the Ice Age, fire was far more than a convenience. It was a difference between life and death. The flickering flames of carefully tended fire provided warmth in the freezing darkness, protection against predators, and the ability to cook food, making it digestible and nutritious. It was the heart of every shelter, the centerpiece of social interaction, and a tool that amplified the survival capabilities of early humans. The contrast between the warm, glowing light of fire and the icy, silent expanse outside underscores its unparalleled importance in prehistoric life. Early humans did not stumble upon fire. They learned to harness it through observation and experimentation. Lightning strikes, volcanic activity, and naturally occurring fires provided initial inspiration, teaching them how flames could be controlled, nurtured, and preserved. From these sparks of knowledge came the creation of hearths within caves and open spaces, a practice that transformed the dynamics of human settlement. The ability to produce and maintain fire gave humans a strategic advantage over both the environment and other species, allowing them to survive winters that might have otherwise claimed their lives. The act of building a fire was a skill in itself. Dry wood, twigs, moss, and resin were carefully selected for their flammability and heat retention properties. Some communities may have used friction techniques, striking stones, or rubbing sticks together to generate sparks. Once a fire was lit, it required constant attention, adding fuel at the right intervals, controlling airflow, and managing smoke to prevent suffocation. These tasks were often distributed among group members, creating a rhythm of cooperation and shared responsibility. Fire was not merely an object. It was a living presence that demanded respect, vigilance, and skill. Beyond warmth, fire was essential for cooking and food preservation. Raw meat from hunting could be tough, difficult to digest, or even contaminated with parasites. Roasting and smoking transformed food into a safer, more palatable form, providing essential calories and nutrients for survival. Fire also allowed for the drying of meat, storage of fat, and sometimes even boiling of plant-based foods when combined with rudimentary containers. This innovation extended the edible lifespan of food, making it possible to endure periods of scarcity. The contrast between raw, cold meals and the cooked, energy-rich food from fire illustrates the transformative power of this discovery. Fire also served as a powerful deterrent against predators. Wolves, bears, and other large carnivores, though formidable, were often wary of flames. Early humans used this to their advantage, positioning fire strategically to create barriers, illuminate approaches, and alert the group to movement outside. The protective influence of fire allowed humans to rest more safely, venture further for hunting, and establish more permanent shelters in areas that might otherwise have been too dangerous to inhabit. In this way, fire extended human influence into a frozen landscape, tipping the balance of power in favor of survival. The psychological benefits of fire were equally profound. The flickering flames offer a sense of security and companionship in a world otherwise dominated by silence and isolation. Groups gathered around fires to share knowledge, recount hunts, and teach essential survival skills. Storytelling, whether verbal or through symbolic gestures and cave markings, became a cornerstone of cultural transmission, reinforcing social bonds and collective memory. The contrast between the warmth and illumination inside and the cold darkness outside created a sanctuary where human ingenuity and social cohesion could flourish, laying the foundation for complex societal structures. Fire management required careful planning, especially during the harshest winter months. Fuel had to be gathered in advance, often from miles away, and stored in ways that kept it dry and usable. Fires had to be monitored continuously, especially during storms or strong winds that could extinguish flames. Groups developed strategies to maintain heat even during absence, such as creating ember pits that could be reignited with minimal effort. This meticulous attention to fire reflects a deep understanding of both the material properties of fuels and the behavior of flames, a knowledge system passed from one generation to the next, critical for long-term survival. In addition to practical uses, fire played a ceremonial and symbolic role in Ice Age communities. Sparks and flames may have represented life itself, a tangible force against the cold and darkness that threatened human existence. Rituals around fire could have reinforced social hierarchies, celebrated successful hunts, or honored ancestors. Cave paintings often depict fires or animals associated with them, suggesting that fire was not only a tool, but focal point of early human spirituality and cultural identity. The interplay of practical utility and symbolic significance highlights fire's central role in shaping both the physical and cultural survival of prehistoric humans. Fire also enabled technological innovation. Heated stones could be used to cook, soften hides for clothing, or shape tools with greater precision. Smoke could deter insects or signal other groups across distances. The controlled use of fire transformed the environment from a passive threat into a manageable space, demonstrating the remarkable adaptability of early humans. By mastering fire, humans effectively extended their physiological limits, overcoming the constraint of body heat and metabolic needs that the cold imposed. This adaptation was not only survival-driven, but also a catalyst for creativity, problem-solving, and experimentation. The management of fire required social cooperation and coordination. In many groups, certain individuals specialized in tending the flames, understanding fuel types, and timing additions to maintain consistent heat. Others focused on cooking, while hunters and gatherers brought back resources to feed the group. This division of labor illustrates the intersection of technology, social organization, and survival strategy. It also emphasizes a contrast between solitary existence and communal life. Those who shared knowledge and collaborated around fire were far more likely to endure the harsh winters than those who attempted to face the cold alone. Ultimately, fire was more than heat or light. It was a cornerstone of human civilization in the Ice Age. It allowed early humans to transform inhospitable landscapes into viable habitats, extending their range and improving their chances of survival. Fire turned fear into opportunity, darkness into warmth, and isolation into community. The mastery of fire represents one of humanity's earliest and most profound triumphs over nature, illustrating the ingenuity, cooperation, and resilience that define our species. By understanding fire's central role, viewers gain insight into why early humans could survive conditions that might otherwise have been insurmountable. It is a thread that connects every aspect of prehistoric life: shelter, clothing, hunting, food preparation, social structure, and even cultural expression. The warmth of a fire in a cave is not merely a physical necessity. It is a symbol of human adaptability, intelligence, and the enduring spirit that allowed our ancestors to thrive in the coldest nights of the Ice Age. In the relentless chill of the Ice Age, survival demanded more than strength or courage. It required ingenuity and the ability to manipulate the environment to one's advantage. Tools and weapons were not mere conveniences. They were lifelines. From stone blades to wooden spears, early humans relied on an array of implements to hunt, process food, defend themselves, and endure the harsh winter months. The contrast between a well-equipped human and one without these tools could mean the difference between life and death, highlighting the critical role of technology in prehistoric survival. Stone tools were the cornerstone of Ice Age ingenuity. Early humans carefully selected rocks with the right hardness and texture, striking them with precision to create sharp edges for cutting, scraping, and carving. These tools were used to process animal hides into clothing, fashion weapons for hunting, and even carve wood for shelter construction. The skill required to craft such implements was remarkable, demanding patience, observation, and an intimate understanding of materials. The evolution of stone tool technology illustrates the human capacity for innovation, where intellect and dexterity combine to extend survival capabilities. Wooden implements played an equally vital role, particularly in hunting. Spears, clubs, and digging sticks allowed humans to reach, strike, and manipulate their environment in ways that their bare hands could not. Some spears were fire-hardened, making them stronger and more durable for hunting large game. Others were tipped with stone or bone, turning a simple branch into a lethal weapon. These tools transformed humans into effective predators, capable of bringing down animals much larger and stronger than themselves. The contrast between raw physical strength and technological leverage underscores the advantage that creativity provided in the struggle for survival. Bone and antler were also indispensable resources. Sharp fragments were used to pierce hides, sew clothing, or fish for food, while antler could be fashioned into points, hooks, and digging implements. These materials, lightweight yet durable, allowed humans to create multifunctional tools that were perfectly adapted to the challenges of winter survival. By combining stone, wood, and bone, early humans developed a toolkit that maximized efficiency and minimized risk, ensuring that every action, from hunting to shelter construction, was supported by carefully crafted technology. Tools were not only functional, but also enabled innovation in food processing and preservation. Cutting tools allowed humans to butcher large animals efficiently, extracting every edible portion while discarding less useful parts. Scrapers and awls process hides into warm clothing, providing essential insulation against frostbite and hypothermia. Even simple grinding stones transformed plant materials into usable food, demonstrating that survival required both physical skill and intellectual foresight. Each tool reflected a nuanced understanding of the natural world and a deliberate effort to overcome the limitations imposed by the cold, harsh environment. Weapons were particularly critical during winter, when food was scarce and predators were desperate. Hunting large mammals like mammoths or reindeer required precision, coordination, and the right equipment. Spears, axes, and clubs allowed humans to engage prey safely, while traps and pits enabled strategic capture without direct confrontation. The contrast between unarmed vulnerability and armed capability emphasizes the life-saving importance of technology in Ice Age survival. Without these tools, even the most resourceful humans would have struggled to procure enough food to endure the long winters. Tools also served defensive purposes. Wolves, cave lions, and bears were constant threats, and early humans used their implements to create barriers, fend off attacks, and maintain territory. Sharp blades would be thrown, sticks wielded as clubs, and fires used in combination with tools to create deterrence. These strategies highlight the intimate link between technology and strategy, showing that survival depended not only on physical prowess, but on the ability to plan and manipulate the environment effectively. The development of specialized tools reflects the emergence of skill and social learning. Crafting a spear, stone knife, or bone awl was not a task undertaken in isolation. Knowledge was shared, passed down, and refined over generations. Children observed elders, apprentices honed techniques, and communities collectively improved designs. This early form of education ensured that each generation was better equipped to face the challenges of winter, creating a feedback loop of innovation and survival. The contrast between solitary learning and communal knowledge underscores the social dimension of technological advancement. Tool-making also fostered experimentation and creativity. Early humans tested different materials, shapes, and techniques, learning which combinations were most effective under extreme cold. This process encouraged observation, adaptation, and problem-solving, skills that extended beyond survival to influence culture, art, and social organization. Tools became extensions of human capability, enabling actions that were previously impossible and allowing humans to shape the world around them rather than merely respond to it. Moreover, tools facilitated mobility and efficiency. With weapons and implements in hand, humans could hunt larger game, process food faster, and construct more effective shelters. Tools extended human influence over the environment, turning a threatening wilderness into a manageable space. The ability to modify the landscape, fashion clothing, and manipulate resources directly impacted survival rates, demonstrating that technology was not merely supplemental. It was central to the Ice Age human experience. In essence, the mastery of tools and weapons reflects the combination of intelligence, creativity, and social cooperation that defined early humans. These implements transformed vulnerability into capability, fear into strategy, and scarcity into opportunity. Every blade, spear, and bone fragment tells a story of adaptation and ingenuity, highlighting the human drive to innovate in the face of extreme adversity. The contrast between an unarmed, exposed individual and a group equipped with effective tools encapsulates a broader narrative of Ice Age survival. Human resourcefulness, ingenuity, and collaboration were as vital as strength and courage. Through this lens, tools and technology emerged not just as artifacts of survival, but as symbols of early human mastery over their environment. They illustrate the intersection of intellect, observation, and manual skill, demonstrating how humans could thrive in conditions that might have overwhelmed less adaptable species. By examining these implements, we gain insight into the ingenuity, foresight, and cooperation that enable our ancestors to endure the harshest winters and lay the groundwork for the complex societies that would follow. Winter transformed the Ice Age landscape into a frozen wilderness where every step could be dangerous and every hunt was a matter of life or death. For early humans, hunting was not merely a means of obtaining food. It was an intricate strategy that demanded skill, intelligence, and courage. Scarcity intensified during the cold months, as vegetation was buried under snow, and many animals migrated, hibernated, or became more difficult to track. The contrast between the abundance of prey in warmer seasons and the perilous scarcity of winter made hunting a high-stakes endeavor, requiring both planning and cooperation. Tracking animals in snow-covered terrain demanded acute observation and patience. Human hunters learned to read subtle signs, footprints frozen in ice, broken branches, or disturbed snow, to locate prey. These signs were often fleeting, erased by wind or new snowfall, meaning hunters had to act quickly and decisively. The ability to interpret these traces was a skill honed over generations, passed down through stories, gestures, and hands-on training. The contrast between successful interpretation and missed opportunity could mean the difference between nourishment and starvation. Cooperation was essential in winter hunting. Individuals rarely hunted alone, particularly when targeting large animals like mammoths, reindeer, or bison. Groups coordinated strategies to herd, ambush, or trap their prey, using natural terrain features like cliffs, ravines, or frozen rivers to their advantage. Some evidence suggests that early humans even drove animals into pre-prepared pits or enclosures, showcasing a sophisticated understanding of animal behavior and spatial planning. The combination of teamwork, observation, and technology allowed humans to overcome physical limitations, illustrating the critical interplay between intelligence and collaboration in survival. Weapons played a central role in winter hunting. Spears, often tipped with stone or bone, were used for thrusting or throwing, enabling humans to maintain a safe distance from large, powerful prey. Clubs, axes, and even sharpened sticks complemented these tools, while traps and snares allowed hunters to capture smaller animals with minimal risk. Some communities may have employed decoys, noise, or fire to manipulate animal movements, demonstrating strategic thinking under extreme conditions. The contrast between bare-handed attempts and weapon-assisted hunting highlights how technology amplified human capabilities in a frozen environment. Timing and patience were equally important. Prey behavior changed in winter. Some animals moved to lower altitudes or denser forests, while others became more aggressive due to hunger. Hunters had to anticipate these patterns, often waiting for hours or days in concealment. Exposure to the cold during these periods tested physical endurance and mental fortitude. Success required a combination of skill, knowledge, and sheer determination. The stakes were never low. A failed hunt could mean the depletion of vital food stores for days or weeks. Environmental awareness extended beyond tracking prey. Hunters needed to understand the behavior of predators, the stability of ice and snow, and the best locations for ambushes or traps. Wolves, cave lions, and bears not only competed for food, but also posed direct threats to humans during hunts. Knowledge of predator habits allowed hunters to minimize risk, using fire, tools, and terrain to their advantage. The interplay between hunter and predator created a constant tension, emphasizing precariousness of life in winter landscapes. The winter hunt was also a physical challenge. Humans had to endure freezing temperatures, deep snow, and difficult terrain while carrying weapons, tracking prey, and sometimes dragging heavy carcasses back to the cave. Strength, stamina, and endurance were tested daily. The human body, adapted for cold but still vulnerable, had to operate at peak efficiency. Frostbite, hypothermia, and exhaustion were constant threats, making a successful return from a hunt a triumph of both physiology and strategy. The contrast between vulnerability and capability highlights the resilience required to survive in such an environment. Preparation before and after the hunt was equally critical. Hunters needed to dress appropriately, often layering furs and hides to conserve warmth, and bring tools and weapons ready for immediate use. After a kill, butchering required skill to maximize the yield of meat, fat, and hide while minimizing waste. Fire was often used to preserve meat, cook portions for immediate consumption, and smoke or dry additional supplies for long-term storage. This combination of planning, execution, and post-hunt processing underscores the interconnectedness of survival strategies in winter. Hunting was not only a physical and strategic endeavor, but also a social and cultural one. Successful hunts reinforced group cohesion and status, as those who procured large or dangerous prey gained respect and influence. Sharing meat and distributing portions carefully ensured that all members of the group survived, strengthening social bonds. The rituals surrounding hunting, preparations, chants, or symbolic gestures, may have provided psychological support, focusing the mind and easing the tension of high-risk endeavors. The contrast between fear and achievement illustrates the dual physical and emotional dimensions of prehistoric hunting life. Ice Age hunting practices also reveal early humans' intimate knowledge of animal behavior and ecology. They understood seasonal patterns, migratory routes, feeding habits, and even subtle changes in terrain that influence prey movement. This knowledge allowed humans to predict where and when animals would appear, conserving energy while increasing the likelihood of success. Observing and adapting to nature was not passive. It was an active negotiation with the environment, where observation, patience, and intelligence became as important as strength or weaponry. Winter hunting also shaped technological innovation. New weapons, traps, and tools emerged to meet the challenges of frozen landscapes. Hunting methods evolved to address scarcity, danger, and mobility. For example, long-range spears and throwing sticks allowed humans to strike from safer distances, while pit traps leveraged natural terrain to capture large animals with minimal direct confrontation. These innovations highlight the creative problem-solving that defined early human life, turning necessity into opportunity. Ultimately, hunting in winter was a crucible of human skill, ingenuity, and resilience. Every expedition required the integration of knowledge, strategy, physical endurance, and social cooperation. The contrast between life inside the cave, secure and warmed by fire, and the treacherous environment outside underscores the stakes of survival. Each successful hunt was not merely a meal, but a testament to human adaptability, foresight, and the capacity to thrive under extreme conditions. Through the lens of winter hunting, viewers gain insight into the daily realities of Ice Age life. The risks, the strategies, the innovations, and the cooperation that allowed humans to endure what might otherwise have been insurmountable challenges. Hunting was both a necessity and a defining feature of human evolution, shaping physiology, social structures, and culture in profound ways. In this frozen world, the hunt was more than a task. It was a narrative of survival, intelligence, and resilience that would echo through generations. While hunting provided vital protein and fat during the Ice Age, it was the act of gathering that often determined whether a group survived the harsh winter months. Plants, nuts, berries, and roots were essential supplements to human diet, providing nutrients, fiber, and vital calories that meat alone could not supply. In frozen landscapes, gathering became a test of knowledge, endurance, and timing. The contrast between the sparse, icy terrain and the hidden abundance of nature highlighted the skill required to find edible resources and avoid poisonous or ineatable alternatives. Winter foraging was a challenging endeavor. Snow and ice covered much of the landscape, burying edible plants beneath layers of frost. Early humans needed a deep understanding of seasonal cycles and plant behavior to know which species remained viable and where they might be located. Roots could be dug from beneath frozen soil, hardy berries picked from shrubs that survived the frost, and nuts collected from trees where they had fallen before the snow arrived. These tasks demanded physical strength, patience, and keen observation, with every misstep potentially leading to wasted energy or injury. Gathering was often a cooperative effort. Groups divided responsibilities based on skill, knowledge, and physical capability. Some individuals specialized in digging or foraging in frozen soil, while others scaled trees or navigated icy terrain for berries and nuts. Coordination minimized exposure to the cold and maximized efficiency. Like hunting, gathering required both physical endurance and strategic planning, emphasizing the human ability to adapt behaviors to seasonal challenges. The contrast between a solitary, inexperienced forager and a coordinated group highlights how cooperation amplified survival chances. Tools played a crucial role in gathering. Simple implements, such as digging sticks or sharpened bones, enabled early humans to access roots and tubers buried beneath the frozen ground. Baskets or containers made from woven plant fibers allowed gathered food to be carried back to shelter, preserving it for consumption over several days. Even rudimentary knives and scrapers were used to process plant material, removing inedible parts and preparing edible portions. These tools transformed a basic survival task into a systematic and efficient practice, demonstrating the ingenuity required to thrive in extreme environments. Food preservation was equally critical during winter. Fresh plants were often stored in cool, dry locations within caves or sheltered areas, while some items were buried in snow or ice to prolong freshness. Methods like drying or freezing allowed humans to maintain a supply of essential nutrients during periods when foraging or hunting was impossible. This foresight required planning, knowledge of environmental conditions, and careful attention to detail. The contrast between those who could store and manage food successfully and those who could not underscores the life-or-death importance of preservation techniques. Understanding which plants were safe to eat demanded knowledge passed down through generations. Mistakes could be fatal. Certain roots or berries were toxic, while others provided essential calories. Observation of animal behavior often guided humans in identifying edible species, as did experimentation and accumulated experience. This blend of empirical learning, trial and error, and shared wisdom exemplifies the sophisticated ecological knowledge early humans developed in response to winter scarcity. The contrast between ignorance and experience illustrates how survival relied as much on intelligence as on physical strength. Gathering also reinforced social bonds and contributed to group cohesion. Shared knowledge about where and when to find food, methods for storage, and techniques for processing created interdependence within the tribe. Younger members learned essential survival skills by accompanying elders, observing, and practicing in real-world conditions. These interactions reinforced communication, cooperation, and the transmission of cultural practices. The contrast between isolated struggle and coordinated effort highlights the central role of social structures in enhancing winter survival. The nutritional importance of gathered foods extended beyond immediate sustenance. High-energy roots, fibrous plants, and vitamin-rich berries help maintain metabolic function, prevent illness, and support recovery from the physical demands of hunting and exposure. Fat from nuts complemented protein from meat, creating a balanced diet capable of sustaining the human body through the frigid months. The contrast between a diet supplemented by gathered foods and one reliant solely on meat underscores how ecological knowledge directly influenced health, endurance, and long-term survival. Winter gathering was also a lesson in patience and observation. Snow-covered landscapes demanded careful navigation and acute awareness of subtle environmental cues. Early humans needed to recognize depressions in the snow indicating buried plants, follow animal tracks to identify potential foraging sites, and understand microclimates where edible resources might survive the frost. This attention to detail transformed what could have been a desperate scramble for food into a systematic, skillful activity that combined intuition, observation, and knowledge of the natural world. Ultimately, gathering and food preservation illustrate the resourcefulness and adaptability of Ice Age humans. While hunting often provided dramatic moments of survival and danger, it was a quiet diligence of gathering, the careful planning of storage, and the strategic use of tools that ensured long-term endurance through winter. The contrast between these complementary activities, hunting for immediate caloric needs and gathering for sustenance over time, reflects a sophisticated understanding of environment, seasonality, and resource management that defined early human life. Through the lens of gathering and preservation, viewers gain insight into the everyday ingenuity that sustained humans during the coldest months. These practices reveal not only physical skill, but also intelligence, social cooperation, and foresight. In a frozen, often barren landscape, early humans transformed scarcity into survival, demonstrating that life in the Ice Age was not only a battle against the elements, but also a testament to human adaptability and resilience. In the frigid depths of the Ice Age, clothing was not simply a matter of comfort. It was a critical tool for survival. Temperatures often plunged far below freezing, and wind, snow, and ice could quickly drain body heat, leading to frostbite or hypothermia. Early humans needed more than raw endurance. They needed protection against the relentless cold. The development and use of clothing and winter gear transformed the human body from a vulnerable organism into a resilient, insulated machine, enabling survival in an environment that would have been otherwise uninhabitable. The contrast between bare skin exposed to winter and well-crafted clothing highlights the life-saving importance of this technology. Animal hides were the primary material for Ice Age clothing. Hunters carefully selected thick, durable furs from the animals they killed, utilizing not only the meat but also the skins for garments. These hides were often layered to provide maximum insulation, with softer underfurs placed close to the skin and coarser outer layers serving as windbreaks. Early humans understood the properties of different furs. Thicker hides from cold-adapted animals like mammoths and reindeer offered superior warmth, while lighter furs were reserved for flexibility and mobility. This knowledge demonstrates an intimate understanding of the natural world and the materials it offered. Sewing techniques were surprisingly sophisticated. Bone needles, sharpened awls, and sinew threads allowed humans to stitch hides together with precision, creating garments that fit the body and retained heat. Some evidence suggests the use of decorative or symbolic patterns, indicating that clothing was both functional and a means of identity or status. The ability to fashion fitted garments from raw materials highlights human ingenuity, as well as the cognitive skills required to visualize, plan, and execute complex construction in a harsh environment. Layering was a critical strategy. Multiple layers of hides and furs trapped air, creating insulation that significantly reduced heat loss. This principle is strikingly similar to modern cold-weather clothing, showing that early humans understood thermodynamics through observation and experience rather than theory. The combination of layers, along with carefully constructed footwear, head coverings, and hand protection, allowed humans to maintain mobility and activity even during the coldest months. The contrast between an inadequately dressed individual and a fully insulated one underscores the practical intelligence inherent in Ice Age clothing. Footwear was as vital as the garments covering the torso. Frostbite could quickly immobilize a person, making insulated footwear essential for hunting, foraging, and migration. Early humans crafted boots from soft hides, often stuffed with grass or fur for additional warmth. Moccasin-like designs allowed for flexibility and mobility, while protecting the feet from snow, ice, and rough terrain. These innovations not only preserved health and mobility, but also expanded the human range into colder, more hostile regions, illustrating how clothing directly influenced survival and mobility. Head coverings, gloves, and other extremity protection were equally important. Ears, noses, and fingers were the most vulnerable to frostbite, and humans devised ways to insulate these areas using fur, hide, and layered materials. Even small adaptations, like wrapping hands with sinew and fur, could mean the difference between functioning in freezing conditions and suffering debilitating injury. The contrast between exposed extremities and fully protected ones emphasizes the precision and practicality of early winter gear. Winter clothing also reflected social and cultural practices. The use of furs and decorations could signal status, skill, or affiliation within a group. Garments may have carried symbolic meaning, reflecting the identity of the wearer or the achievements of the hunter. This dual purpose, practical and social, highlights the multifaceted nature of clothing, showing that even in survival contexts, humans sought expression and meaning alongside protection. Preparation and maintenance of clothing were ongoing activities. Hides needed to be tanned or treated to resist moisture, stitched garments repaired regularly, and layers adjusted according to temperature and activity. These practices demonstrate long-term planning, foresight, and a sophisticated understanding of materials. Clothing was not disposable. It was a crucial, durable technology that required care and knowledge to remain effective, emphasizing the intimate relationship between humans and their crafted environment. The creation of winter gear was also a communal effort. While some specialize in hunting and processing hides, others focus on stitching, layering, and crafting additional items like belts, straps, or insulated containers. Children learned these skills through observation and practice, ensuring that knowledge of survival gear was passed from one generation to the next. The contrast between solitary improvisation and coordinated communal craft highlights the importance of social cooperation in mastering environmental challenges. Clothing in the Ice Age was more than protection. It was a form of adaptation that expanded human capabilities. It allowed humans to hunt longer, travel further, and endure harsher climates than any other contemporary species. By combining functional design with material knowledge, early humans created wearable technology that was both innovative and indispensable. The interplay between human ingenuity and natural resources demonstrates the critical role of winter gear in the broader survival strategy. Ultimately, clothing and winter gear represent a fusion of necessity, creativity, and intelligence. Every stitched hide, layered fur, and insulated boot tells a story of survival against extreme odds. The contrast between exposed vulnerability and carefully protected resilience illustrates how humans transformed a hostile environment into a manageable one. Clothing was not merely a tool. It was a lifeline, an extension of human capability, and a testament to the resourcefulness that allowed our ancestors to thrive in the frozen wilderness of the Ice Age. Through this lens, viewers gain a vivid understanding of how early humans engineered their survival. Clothing was not an afterthought, but a central strategy, reflecting intelligence, observation, social cooperation, and cultural expression. In the harshest winters, garments became the armor of life, allowing humans to endure, hunt, migrate, and ultimately thrive where few other species could. Winter was not only a test of physical endurance for Ice Age humans, it was also a season that highlighted the importance of family and social cohesion. In a world dominated by freezing temperatures, scarce resources, and constant threats from predators, the survival of each individual often depended on the strength and cooperation of the group. Families huddled together in caves or shelters, sharing warmth, food, and knowledge, creating a microcosm of safety and stability in a dangerous environment. The contrast between isolation and communal life underscores how social bonds were as crucial as fire, clothing, or tools for enduring winter. Early humans relied heavily on kinship and group structure for survival. Parents, siblings, and extended family members coordinated tasks such as food gathering, hunting, fire maintenance, and childcare. This division of labor was critical. It allowed each member to contribute according to their abilities, ensuring that energy was used efficiently and that vital tasks were completed even under extreme conditions. The contrast between a lone individual and a coordinated family group highlights the evolutionary advantage of social organization in the face of environmental adversity. Childcare was particularly important during the harsh winter months. Infants and young children were vulnerable to cold, malnutrition, and illness, and their survival required constant attention. Mothers often carried infants close to their bodies for warmth, while older siblings helped with feeding and protection. Knowledge of how to wrap, insulate, and nurture children in freezing conditions was passed down from generation to generation, creating a system of interdependence that ensured the continuity of life. The contrast between vulnerable infancy and collective care emphasizes the critical role of family structures in human survival. Elders and experienced hunters played a central role in guiding the group. Their knowledge of hunting techniques, migration patterns, and weather prediction was invaluable during winter. By sharing this wisdom, they increased the survival odds of the entire community, reinforcing respect and authority within the group. Elders also contributed to cultural continuity, teaching younger members about rituals, traditions, and symbolic meaning of the environment. The contrast between inexperienced youth and knowledgeable elders illustrates the importance of social learning in human adaptation. Communication was key to maintaining social cohesion. Early humans used a combination of vocalizations, gestures, and symbolic signals to coordinate hunting, gather food, and warn of predators. These forms of communication became more refined over time, allowing groups to operate effectively even in challenging conditions. Shared language and gestures reinforced trust, cooperation, and mutual understanding, providing a psychological anchor in an environment that was otherwise unpredictable and threatening. The contrast between chaos and coordinated communication highlights the adaptive power of social interaction. Winter also fostered cultural and ritual practices within families and social groups. Gathered around fire, individuals engage in storytelling, music, and symbolic activities that reinforce communal identity. These rituals provided not only entertainment, but also a framework for teaching survival skills, transmitting knowledge, and maintaining morale. The contrast between the harshness outside and the warmth and vibrancy inside the shelter underscores the dual role of social life in both practical survival and emotional resilience. Food sharing was another critical element of social cohesion. Winter scarcity demanded careful distribution of resources, ensuring that no member of the group starved while others consumed excess. Successful hunters and gatherers often provided for the entire family, reinforcing bonds and establishing trust. This mutual support system created an early form of social contract, where cooperation was rewarded with protection, food, and the assurance of collective survival. The contrast between hoarding and sharing emphasizes the evolutionary advantage of altruistic behavior in extreme environments. Cooperation extended beyond immediate family to the larger group or tribe. Extended networks of families often work together, sharing hunting grounds, knowledge of shelter sites, and strategies for avoiding predators. Seasonal gatherings may have allowed for socialization, mate selection, and the exchange of information about distant resources. In a frozen landscape, cooperation and trust were not just advantageous. They were essential. The contrast between solitary existence and collaborative networks underscores the critical role of social structures in human endurance. Winter also shaped recreational and educational aspects of social life. While survival was paramount, periods of downtime around the fire were used to teach younger members practical skills such as tool-making, fire management, and tracking. Storytelling reinforced lessons about animal behavior, seasonal changes, and cultural values, ensuring that knowledge was passed down efficiently. Games, songs, and mimicry may have also provided psychological relief, strengthening bonds and preparing children for the challenges of adult life. The contrast between playful learning and the harsh realities outside illustrates the holistic nature of social adaptation. Emotional support played a crucial role in maintaining group stability. Winter was a time of stress, fatigue, and danger, and the ability to comfort, encourage, and care for one another increased resilience. Shared rituals, storytelling, and physical closeness around fire fostered trust and reduced fear, enabling humans to maintain focus and coordination despite extreme conditions. The contrast between isolation-induced fear and the security of social bonds demonstrates how emotional intelligence was a key factor in survival. Ultimately, family and social life in winter was a complex interplay of survival, education, cultural transmission, and emotional support. Every act of care, communication, and cooperation strengthened the group's resilience, allowing humans to endure months of cold, scarcity, and threat. The contrast between individual vulnerability and collective strength underscores the evolutionary significance of social structures, which amplified human adaptability far beyond what individual skill or ingenuity could achieve. Through the lens of winter social life, viewers gain insight into how early humans transform extreme environmental pressures into opportunities for cooperation, learning, and cultural development. The warmth of shared fire, the rhythm of coordinated work, and the bonds of family were as essential to survival as tools, fire, and clothing. In the frozen expanses of the Ice Age, humans discovered that their greatest strength lay not only in their physical adaptations, but in their social connections, creating communities capable of enduring what might otherwise have been insurmountable challenges. In the harsh, frozen landscapes of the Ice Age, survival depended not only on physical skill and social cohesion, but also on belief, ritual, and spiritual understanding. Early humans confronted forces beyond their control, blizzards, predators, and famine, and turned to rituals as a way to interpret, influence, and cope with the unknown. Caves, fires, and gathering sites became sacred spaces where humans attempted to connect with powers greater than themselves. The contrast between the unpredictable external world and the structured, symbolic internal world highlights the importance of spirituality as a tool for psychological survival and cultural cohesion. Archaeological evidence suggests that ritual and belief were deeply intertwined with daily life. Cave paintings, carvings, and engraved objects often depicted animals, celestial phenomena, and abstract symbols. These representations were not mere decoration. They likely held spiritual or ritual significance, expressing gratitude for successful hunts, invoking protection, or teaching younger generations about survival. The deliberate placement of these images in shelters or near communal spaces indicates a sophisticated understanding of symbolism and an effort to integrate belief into the rhythm of daily life. The contrast between survival as practical necessity and survival as spiritual practice reflects a multidimensional approach to life in extreme conditions. Rituals around hunting were particularly prominent. Before or after a hunt, humans may have performed ceremonies to honor the animal spirit, seek success in future endeavors, or ensure the group's protection. These acts reinforce ethical codes, social norms, and respect for nature, embedding ecological wisdom within spiritual practices. The contrast between the danger of the hunt and the calm of ritualized preparation or Thanksgiving illustrates how early humans used spirituality to cope with fear and uncertainty, transforming stress into focus and communal cohesion. Fire itself often held symbolic significance. Beyond its practical uses for warmth and cooking, fire was central to rituals that bound communities together. Flames provided a focal point for storytelling, ceremonies, and meditation, representing life, renewal, and the protective force of human ingenuity against the cold and darkness. The ritual use of fire strengthened social bonds, transmitting knowledge and reinforcing shared values, while also offering a tangible metaphor for human resilience. The contrast between the cold, impersonal environment outside and controlled, sacred space of the fire underscores the psychological and cultural power of ritual. Burial practices further demonstrate the spiritual dimension of Ice Age life. Some evidence suggests that early humans buried their dead with care, sometimes including tools, ornaments, or food items. These practices imply beliefs in an afterlife, spiritual protection, or reverence for ancestors. The meticulous attention to burial rites reflects not only respect, but also a desire to impose order and meaning on a chaotic world. The contrast between death in the wild and ritualized burial within the community underscores how humans integrated spiritual understanding with practical survival. Rituals also reinforce social hierarchy and leadership. Shamans, elders, or individuals with specialized knowledge may have guided ceremonies, interpreted signs from nature, and mediated between the human and spiritual realms. Their authority derived not only from physical skill, but also from wisdom, vision, and symbolic insight. By organizing rituals and instructing younger members, these individuals maintained social cohesion, ensured cultural continuity, and provided psychological security. The contrast between the uncertainty of the natural world and the stability provided by spiritual leadership highlights the adaptive role of ritual in group survival. Belief systems extended to natural phenomena as well. Early humans observed weather patterns, animal migrations, and celestial events, interpreting them as signs or omens. Rituals connected to these observations may have involved dances, chants, or symbolic gestures, guiding decisions about hunting, migration, or shelter. This interplay of observation and ritual illustrates a sophisticated integration of empirical knowledge and spiritual practice, where understanding the environment was inseparable from interpreting its significance. The contrast between knowledge and superstition demonstrates how early humans balanced practical survival with a need for meaning and psychological stability. Seasonal and life cycle rituals further structured human experience. Birth, maturation, and seasonal transitions were likely marked by ceremonies that reinforced group cohesion and continuity. These practices helped individuals navigate critical life stages and maintain a transmission of knowledge necessary for survival in harsh conditions. By embedding survival strategies within ritualized frameworks, early humans created systems that ensured both practical and cultural endurance. The contrast between the randomness of life and the structured rhythm of ritualized observances illustrates the human capacity to impose order on uncertainty. Symbolic artifacts also played a role in spiritual and ritual practices. Carved figurines, decorated tools, and painted stones suggest that early humans imbued objects with meaning, possibly as protective talismans, teaching aids, or offerings. These artifacts strengthen the connection between humans, their environment, and their beliefs, serving as tangible reminders of shared knowledge, respect for animals, and reverence for natural forces. The contrast between the utilitarian function of tools and their symbolic significance underscores the multidimensional nature of human adaptation in the Ice Age. Ultimately, rituals, beliefs, and spiritual practices provided Ice Age humans with psychological resilience, social cohesion, and a framework for understanding the unpredictable forces around them. In a frozen, often hostile environment, these practices were not superfluous. They were integral to survival, offering guidance, comfort, and a sense of purpose. The contrast between fear and reassurance, chaos and ritualized order, highlights the indispensable role of spirituality in human endurance. Through the lens of ritual and belief, viewers gain insight into how early humans integrated physical survival with cultural and psychological strategies. Spirituality was intertwined with daily life, hunting, social structure, and environmental observation, providing both practical benefits and emotional support. In the harsh winters of the Ice Age, these practices allowed humans not only to survive but to thrive, creating meaning, community, and continuity amidst a landscape defined by extremes. Winter often forced Ice Age humans into motion, prompting migrations and journeys in search of food, shelter, and safety. Unlike hunting or gathering, migration required long-term planning, coordination, and an intimate understanding of the landscape. Movement was dictated by seasonal changes, scarcity of resources, and environmental pressures such as snowstorms, frozen rivers, and shifting animal herds. The contrast between the security of the cave and the perilous openness of the icy wilderness underscores the risks and necessity of mobility in prehistoric survival. Human migration was not random. Groups tracked the availability of food sources, following migratory herds of reindeer, mammoths, and bison, or seeking areas where edible plants and firewood could be found. Knowledge of terrain, weather patterns, and natural shelters was vital. Ice Age humans learned to read the landscape, recognizing safe river crossings, avoiding avalanche-prone slopes, and identifying areas where wind provided natural warmth or snow cover offered protection. Every step carried risk, yet every journey represented a strategy for survival. The contrast between stagnation, which could lead to starvation, and calculated movement demonstrates the intelligence and foresight required for winter survival. Journeys often demanded cooperation and careful distribution of labor. Scouts and hunters went ahead to locate resources or identify hazards, while others maintained fires, prepared food, or safeguarded children and the elderly. Carrying supplies, tools, and gathered food required coordination and physical endurance. Movement in harsh winter conditions necessitated constant vigilance, with every individual relying on the group for survival. The contrast between isolated vulnerability and collective coordination highlights the interdependence that defined human migration strategies. Travel in winter imposed immense physical challenges. Snowdrifts, ice-covered terrain, and bitter winds increased energy expenditure, while the cold demanded continuous thermoregulation. Humans relied on layered clothing, insulated footwear, and knowledge of the landscape to maintain efficiency and reduce exposure to frostbite and hypothermia. Groups moved slowly, often resting near natural shelters or fire sites, balancing the need for progress with the need for safety. The contrast between exposed individuals and prepared, strategically moving groups illustrates how preparation and adaptation determine the success of long journeys. Migration also had profound implications for social structure and community cohesion. Extended family groups sometimes merged with other bands, exchanging knowledge, resources, and skills. These encounters strengthened alliances, allowed for mate selection, and facilitated the sharing of survival strategies. Conversely, groups that failed to maintain cohesion during journeys risked fragmentation, conflict, or resource mismanagement. The contrast between social stability and disorganization highlights how mobility shaped the social dynamics of early humans. Natural landmarks and environmental cues guided migration. Mountains, rivers, coastlines, and forests served as navigational aids, while celestial patterns and seasonal changes provided temporal orientation. Early humans developed a sophisticated mental map of their surroundings, remembering safe routes, foraging spots, and predator territories. This knowledge was passed orally through gestures or via symbolic markings on rocks and caves, ensuring that successive generations could replicate successful migration strategies. The contrast between disoriented movement and informed travel emphasizes the role of cognitive mapping in prehistoric survival. Winter journeys were not without risk. Predators, avalanches, thin ice, and severe storms posed constant threats. Human groups mitigated these dangers with strategy, traveling in tight formations, using fire for warmth and signaling, and avoiding hazardous terrain when possible. Children and elders were protected, while scouts and hunters often assumed the highest risk roles. The contrast between vulnerability and strategic mitigation demonstrates the intelligence and resourcefulness required for Ice Age migration. Migration was also linked to knowledge of resource cycles. Humans track plant growth, animal migrations, and seasonal weather to predict when and where to move. This ecological literacy allowed groups to conserve energy, optimize hunting and gathering, and reduce exposure to extreme conditions. By integrating environmental observation with movement, early humans turned winter migration from a desperate flight into a calculated, adaptive strategy. The contrast between random wandering and informed navigation underscores the sophistication of Ice Age survival. Cultural exchange often accompanied migration. As groups encounter one another along migration routes, they exchange tools, techniques, and rituals. These interactions enrich the knowledge base of participating groups, spreading innovations such as improved weapons, clothing designs, or food preservation methods. Migration was therefore not only a survival mechanism, but also a driver of cultural evolution, illustrating how movement shaped the trajectory of human development. The contrast between isolated existence and cross-group interaction highlights the broader significance of migration in human history. In addition to survival, winter journeys fostered ingenuity. Humans developed sleds, drag systems, or other transport strategies to move heavy loads, and coordinated hunting methods that accounted for travel conditions. Temporary shelters were constructed along migration routes, and fire management became a portable practice, with embers maintained during movement. Every journey required planning, problem-solving, and creativity, reflecting a complex interaction between human intelligence and environmental challenge. The contrast between improvisation and deliberate planning demonstrates the evolutionary advantage conferred by foresight and adaptability. Ultimately, migration during the Ice Age was a testament to human resilience, knowledge, and social cohesion. Every successful journey required integration of physical endurance, environmental literacy, technological innovation, and cooperative strategy. The contrast between the dangers of immobility, starvation, exposure, and predation, and the calculated risks of travel illustrates the delicate balance early humans maintained in order to survive. Migration was not merely movement. It was a dynamic process of adaptation, innovation, and community survival in the harshest of climates. Through the lens of winter migration, viewers gain insight into the strategic, social, and cognitive dimensions of Ice Age life. Movement was dictated by survival imperatives, guided by knowledge of terrain and animal behavior, and executed through cooperation and planning. In the frozen expanse, humans transformed a treacherous landscape into navigable pathways of survival, demonstrating adaptability and resilience that would define our species. Winter landscapes were beautiful but perilous, and Ice Age humans constantly faced threats from predators. Wolves, cave lions, bears, and other apex animals prowled the frozen forests and plains, hunting the same prey and occasionally targeting humans. Survival required vigilance, strategy, and cooperation. The contrast between the warmth and security of a fire-lit cave and the open, predator-filled wilderness underscores the omnipresent tension between life and death in the Ice Age. Every decision, where to hunt, where to shelter, and when to move, was shaped by the need to avoid becoming prey. Predator behavior influenced human activity in profound ways. Humans observed the hunting patterns, territorial ranges, and social structures of dangerous animals, learning to anticipate their movements. Wolves hunted in packs, requiring humans to respect their strategies and avoid encroaching on kill sites. Cave lions were ambush predators, relying on stealth and surprise, forcing humans to develop early warning systems, defensive postures, and strategic avoidance techniques. Bears, with their immense strength, could easily overpower a single human, so knowledge of their habits was essential. The contrast between ignorance and understanding could determine survival, emphasizing the value of observation and intelligence in human adaptation. Defensive strategies were multifaceted. Caves, rock shelters, and natural overhangs provided protection from predators, while fires acted as both deterrents and warning systems. Groups stationed individuals as lookouts, creating early forms of sentry duty. Tools and weapons played a critical role in defense. Spears could be thrust at approaching animals, clubs or stones used to strike from a safe distance, and makeshift barriers built to slow or redirect attackers. The contrast between vulnerability and defensive preparedness demonstrates the ingenuity and foresight that characterized Ice Age survival. Humans also learned to exploit predator behavior. Knowledge of their prey's routines allowed humans to avoid confrontation, choose safer hunting grounds, and sometimes even use predators to their advantage. For example, tracking wolf packs might lead to locating larger herbivores that the wolves were hunting, creating an indirect food source. Fire could be used not only for warmth, but to manipulate predator movements or protect settlements. This adaptive approach illustrates the complex interplay between humans and the natural hierarchy, showing that survival relied on both aggression and caution. Predator encounters were high-risk, high-stakes events. Even armed humans could be seriously injured or killed if caught unprepared. Groups mitigated this risk through cooperation, traveling in numbers, sharing lookout responsibilities, and maintaining close communication. Children and elders were kept at the center of the group, while the most experienced hunters and warriors faced the greatest danger. The contrast between solitary vulnerability and organized group defense highlights the importance of strategy, coordination, and social structure in the Ice Age. Predation pressures also shaped human technology. Weapons were designed not only for hunting but for defense. Spear point were sharpened, clubs reinforced, and protective barriers reinforced. Temporary fortifications around camps, thorny branches, and fire pits created physical obstacles to predators. Early humans even developed signaling systems, such as smoke or loud calls, to alert the group to danger. Every innovation in defense reflected observation, foresight, and adaptability, turning potential threats into manageable risks. Caution and awareness extended to the smallest details. Humans learned to recognize signs of predator presence, such as tracks, scat, or disturbed vegetation, and to interpret environmental cues that indicated danger. Ice and snow amplified sound, enabling humans to detect movement at a distance, while wind direction could carry scent from predators or prey. These observations required keen senses, patience, and attention, demonstrating the combination of physical skill and cognitive acumen essential for survival. The contrast between ignorance and environmental literacy illustrates how knowledge reduced mortality in a dangerous landscape. Predator threats also influenced social behavior and daily routines. Groups adjusted hunting times, gathered in safer areas, and modified travel routes to reduce exposure. Nighttime activities were often centered around the safety of the cave and fire, while daylight hunting and foraging were carefully planned. Even play and education for children occurred under protective supervision. The contrast between unrestricted freedom and calculated caution shows how environmental pressures shaped social and behavioral patterns. Psychological adaptation was equally important. Fear of predators could motivate vigilance, but also impair decision-making if not managed. Rituals, communication, and social support helped mitigate fear, while repeated exposure and learning reduce anxiety and improve response in real encounters. Ice Age humans developed strategies to balance alertness with functionality, ensuring that fear served survival rather than overwhelming it. The contrast between paralyzing fear and adaptive caution underscores the sophisticated mental coping mechanisms required for life in predator-rich environments. Seasonal variation affected predator interactions as well. During winter, many predators face their own food shortages, becoming more aggressive or opportunistic. Human groups needed to anticipate these shifts, adjusting hunting strategies, shelter locations, and migration patterns accordingly. The interplay between predator scarcity and human survival created a dynamic tension, with each species responding to the pressures of scarcity and climate. The contrast between predator abundance and winter scarcity highlights the delicate balance humans maintained in an unpredictable ecosystem. Ultimately, the constant presence of predators shaped Ice Age humans physically, cognitively, and socially. Defense strategies, cooperation, technological innovation, and environmental literacy were all responses to persistent threat of predation. The contrast between life within the safety of human shelters and the danger of the open wilderness underscores the stakes of every decision. Survival was never guaranteed, and every day required a combination of vigilance, skill, and adaptive intelligence. Through the lens of predator threats, viewers gain insight into the omnipresent tension that defined Ice Age life. Humans were both hunters and prey, navigating a landscape where every action could have fatal consequences. Adaptation, observation, cooperation, and ingenuity were not optional. They were essential. In this frozen world of formidable predators, early humans demonstrated remarkable resilience, creating strategies that allowed them not only to survive but to flourish amidst constant danger. In the frozen expanse of the Ice Age, the mastery of shelters and fire was a cornerstone of human survival. Even the strongest, most skilled hunters could not endure the relentless cold without the protection of a safe refuge and a controlled flame. Caves, rock overhangs, and temporary structures offered defense against wind, snow, and predators, while fire provided warmth, light, and a means to cook food. The contrast between the inhospitable external environment and the secure, fire-lit interior of a shelter highlights the transformative power of human ingenuity in the harshest climates. Caves were preferred natural shelters. They offered insulation from wind, snow, and temperature extremes, as well as protection from predators. Early humans often selected sites with strategic advantages, elevated entrances, natural drainage, and proximity to hunting grounds. Inside, the layout was carefully organized. Sleeping areas were positioned near fire pits, while storage spaces for food, tools, and hides were set apart to maintain cleanliness and safety. The contrast between the harshness of the outside world and the carefully arranged interior emphasizes the intelligence and foresight applied to survival strategies. When natural shelters were unavailable, humans constructed temporary structures using available materials. Branches, hides, and bones could be arranged into frames and covered to create insulated tents or lean-tos. These constructions provided protection from the elements, allowing groups to travel longer distances or establish temporary camps during migrations. The ability to build functional shelters from scratch demonstrates early humans' creativity, spatial reasoning, and adaptability, transforming fragile materials into life-sustaining structures. Fire was a central element of survival within these shelters. It provided warmth in freezing temperatures, enabling humans to remain active during harsh winters and protecting them from hypothermia. The ability to maintain fire through snowstorms and freezing nights required skill, planning, and knowledge of fuel types. Wood, moss, and dried plants were carefully selected for their burning properties, and embers were often preserved to rekindle flames without relying on repeated ignition. The contrast between the cold, lifeless outdoors and the warm, glowing heart of the fire underscores the psychological and physical importance of controlled flames. Beyond warmth, fire enabled cooking, which dramatically increased the nutritional value and digestibility of food. Meat could be roasted, fats rendered, and plants softened, making winter diets more efficient and less taxing on the body. Cooking also helped prevent illness by killing parasites and bacteria, enhancing survival odds during months when the immune system was stressed by cold and scarcity. The contrast between raw, risky food and cooked, safe nourishment highlights the multifaceted role of fire in Ice Age life. Fire also served as a social focal point. Gathered around flames, groups shared stories, transmitted knowledge, and engaged in ritual activities. Firelight offered comfort, security, and a sense of community, reinforcing bonds and morale during long, harsh winters. The contrast between the isolation of night and the communal warmth of the fire illustrates how human adaptation combined practical survival with psychological resilience. Maintenance of shelters and fire was a continuous process. Snow accumulation, structural wear, and resource depletion required constant attention. Groups coordinated tasks. Some members collected fuel, others repaired shelters, while skilled individuals ensured that the fire remained steady. Failure in any of these tasks could have immediate consequences, emphasizing the interdependence and cooperative organization within early human communities. The contrast between neglect and diligence highlights the critical role of ongoing care in survival strategies. Site selection for shelters reflected an advanced understanding of microenvironments, wind direction, sun exposure, proximity to water, and natural barriers influenced where humans chose to settle. Some sites offered natural insulation, while others minimized predator access or provided escape routes. By observing and responding to environmental cues, early humans maximized comfort and safety while minimizing risk. The contrast between haphazard habitation and strategic site selection underscores the adaptive intelligence behind shelter placement. Temporary shelters were often supplemented with insulation techniques. Layers of fur, moss, and grasses were used to cover floors, walls, and sleeping areas, conserving heat and providing cushioning. Hearths were positioned to radiate warmth efficiently, and smoke was vented carefully to prevent suffocation while deterring insects and predators. These techniques illustrate the deep knowledge early humans had of materials, thermodynamics, and spatial arrangement, blending technology and environmental awareness. Fire was also critical for signaling and defense. Visible flames and smoke could warn distant members of danger, guide hunters back to camp, or communicate the presence of a group to allies. Strategic use of fire helped deter predators, who avoided flames, and reinforced territorial claims over critical shelters and resources. The contrast between unlit, vulnerable camps and fire-guarded shelters emphasizes the strategic applications of controlled flames beyond warmth and cooking. The mastery of shelters and fire extended into long-term survival planning. Food preservation, tool storage, and child protection all depended on the reliability of these structures. Winter was a season of scarcity, and the ability to maintain habitable shelters over months allowed humans to survive extended periods of extreme cold. The contrast between exposed survival and well-prepared shelter life highlights how central these innovations were to human endurance. Cultural and social practices were intertwined with shelter and fire. Communal sleeping arrangements, shared duties, and ritual gatherings around fire created cohesion and reinforced social norms. Children learned the importance of fire, tool placement, and shelter maintenance from observation and participation, ensuring the transmission of vital knowledge across generations. The contrast between chaotic survival and organized domestic life demonstrates how Ice Age humans integrated practicality with cultural continuity. Ultimately, shelters and fire exemplify the ingenuity, foresight, and adaptability of early humans. They transformed an inhospitable winter environment into a manageable, livable space, allowing communities to thrive despite harsh conditions. The contrast between the frozen wilderness and the warmth, light, and security of a fire-lit shelter illustrates the pivotal role of these technologies in human evolution. Survival was not a matter of brute strength alone. It was a combination of intelligence, cooperation, and innovation that allowed humans to endure. Through the lens of shelters and fire mastery, viewers gain insight into how early humans created controlled environments in an uncontrollable world. Every structure built and every flame maintained represents problem-solving, planning, and adaptation. In the frozen landscapes of the Ice Age, fire and shelter were not just tools. They were the lifeline that allowed humans to survive, socialize, innovate, and ultimately conquer the challenges of winter. Winter survival in the Ice Age was not the result of a single skill or strategy. It was the integration of multiple survival techniques into a cohesive system. Hunting, gathering, clothing, fire, shelter, and social organization all intersected to create a resilient framework that allowed humans to endure the harshest conditions. The contrast between an unprepared individual and a well-coordinated group demonstrates that survival was not merely about physical strength, but about knowledge, planning, and adaptability. Each day in the frozen landscape required the careful balancing of resources, energy, and environmental awareness. Hunting was central to winter survival, providing essential protein and fat necessary to maintain body heat. Humans tracked large game through snow and ice, using sharpened tools, cooperative strategies, and careful observation of animal behavior. Yet, hunting alone was insufficient. In extreme winter conditions, prey could be scarce, and hunting expeditions demanded high energy output, making supplementary food sources critical. This interplay between hunting success and scarcity drove humans to master the complementary skill of gathering, ensuring a steady intake of nutrients from roots, nuts, berries, and other edible plants. The contrast between abundant and scarce seasons highlights the importance of skill diversity in sustaining life. Fire and shelters were equally critical in this integrated system. Fire provided warmth, allowed cooking, and served as a psychological anchor, while shelters offer protection from wind, snow, and predators. The strategic placement of shelters near food sources, water, and hunting grounds allowed humans to conserve energy and maximize efficiency. Winter clothing amplified the effectiveness of these protections, combining insulation and mobility to sustain activity. Together, fire, shelter, and clothing illustrate how early humans combined multiple technologies to create controlled microenvironments, transforming a hostile external world into a manageable space. The contrast between exposed vulnerability and well-prepared habitats underscores the synergy of these survival tools. Social cooperation was the invisible glue that held this system together. Families and extended groups coordinated hunting, gathering, fire maintenance, and childcare. Elders and experienced members transmitted knowledge about seasonal patterns, predator behavior, and ecological cues. Children learned by observation and participation, ensuring the continuity of vital skills. Trust, communication, and shared responsibility were essential. An isolated individual faced exponentially greater risk than a coordinated, knowledgeable group. The contrast between solitary struggle and collaborative resilience highlights the adaptive advantage of social networks in extreme environments. Rituals and belief systems also played a subtle but important role in integrated survival. Spiritual practices offered psychological resilience, reinforced social cohesion, and provided structured frameworks for understanding environmental uncertainty. Ceremonies connected hunting success, fire management, and seasonal observation to shared meaning, reducing anxiety and motivating coordinated effort. This integration of physical, social, and spiritual survival strategies demonstrates the holistic nature of Ice Age adaptation. The contrast between chaos and ritualized order illustrates how culture enhanced both morale and practical survival outcomes. Resource management was another critical component. Humans understood the importance of food preservation, storing gathered plants, dried meats, and fats in insulated spaces or buried in snow to extend shelf life. Tools were maintained meticulously, with repairs and sharpening, ensuring readiness for hunting, gathering, and defense. Firewood was collected strategically, ensuring fuel supplies lasted through extended cold periods. Each element depended on foresight, planning, and observation, and failure in any area could threaten survival. The contrast between short-term improvisation and long-term strategy highlights the sophistication of resource management in prehistoric societies. Predator avoidance and defense were fully integrated into daily life. Knowledge of predator behavior informed shelter placement, movement patterns, and hunting strategies. Defensive tools and fire provided both direct protection and psychological security, allowing humans to operate with confidence despite constant threats. This integration of ecological knowledge with technology and social cooperation created a layered approach to survival, where humans can anticipate, respond, and adapt to dangers in real time. The contrast between helplessness and preparedness illustrates the effectiveness of combined strategies. Adaptation to the winter environment also required energy management. Humans had to carefully balance exertion with caloric intake, ensuring that hunting and foraging efforts did not deplete reserves faster than they could be replenished. Clothing, shelter, and fire reduced energy expenditure by conserving body heat, while cooperative hunting and gathering distributed labor efficiently. Knowledge of seasonal patterns allowed groups to predict periods of scarcity, adjust activity schedules, and make calculated decisions about risk versus reward. The contrast between wasted energy and optimized efficiency underscores the intelligence behind survival tactics. Knowledge transmission was integral to the integration of skills. Oral teaching, demonstration, and participatory learning ensured that survival strategies, tool-making techniques, and environmental knowledge were passed from one generation to the next. Cultural practices, rituals, and storytelling reinforced this transmission, embedding practical and spiritual lessons into daily life. In this way, survival knowledge was cumulative, refined over generations, and shared widely within social networks. The contrast between ignorance and experienced knowledge demonstrates how human adaptation was not merely individual, but generational. Seasonal migration further integrated these survival strategies. Groups moved strategically to access food, water, and shelter while avoiding depleted areas or dangerous predator zones. Migration combined knowledge of geography, weather patterns, and ecological cycles with coordination, energy management, and logistical planning. Shelters could be temporary or permanent, fires portable, and clothing optimized for mobility. Migration highlights the dynamic nature of winter survival, where preparation, adaptability, and flexibility were as important as static skills. The contrast between immobility and informed movement illustrates the human capacity to respond proactively to environmental challenges. Psychological resilience was intertwined with these integrated skills. Constant vigilance, exposure to cold, predator threats, and scarcity created stress, yet rituals, social support, and shared responsibility mitigated fear. Mental toughness, learned through repeated exposure and community reinforcement, allowed humans to act decisively and maintain routines despite adversity. The contrast between panic and composure underscores how psychological adaptation was inseparable from physical and social survival strategies. The integration of skills also fostered innovation. Observing patterns in weather, animal behavior, and plant cycles encouraged early humans to develop new tools, hunting strategies, storage techniques, and clothing designs. Every challenge prompted experimentation, evaluation, and refinement. Winter was a catalyst for creativity, pushing humans to combine knowledge, technology, and social coordination into novel solutions. The contrast between stagnation and innovation highlights the evolutionary advantage of problem-solving under pressure. Ultimately, winter survival in the Ice Age was a symphony of interdependent skills. Hunting, gathering, clothing, shelter, fire, social cohesion, rituals, migration, and predator avoidance all merged to create a resilient, adaptive system. The contrast between unprepared individuals and groups mastering these integrated strategies illustrates the difference between life and death, success and failure. Survival was not the product of a single trait, but the culmination of intelligence, cooperation, observation, and creativity, an extraordinary demonstration of human adaptability. Through the lens of integrated winter survival strategies, viewers gain insight into the holistic mastery early humans achieved. Every skill, from tool-making to fire maintenance, from coordinated hunting to ritualized storytelling, was interwoven into a comprehensive survival framework. In the frozen landscapes of the Ice Age, humans did not simply endure. They thrived, creating adaptive systems that combined knowledge, social cohesion, technology, and culture into a sustainable way of life.